Good morning, faithful listeners. You have tuned in to the P40 Ministries podcast, the one place where you can get a daily explanatory Bible reading to start your day strong. This is your host, Jen, bringing you a brand new episode out of Genesis. Hey there, guys. Good morning to the faithful listener family. This is your host, Jen, here with the P40 Ministries podcast this morning. Today is actually going to be a pretty short episode, mainly because the rest of the chapter is not very long. We are going to be discussing Genesis chapter 33, verses 12 through 20. And there's not a whole lot to talk about in this chapter because it kind of goes into the next chapter as well and sort of ties into each other. So what I'll do for this episode is just read verses 12 through 20, and then just discuss these, and hopefully that will give us a good segue into Genesis chapter 34 on Friday. So definitely stay tuned for that, because both of these episodes will kind of be tied together a little bit. So let's go ahead and read Genesis chapter 33, verses 12 through 20, and finish out the rest of this chapter here. And I will be reading, as always, out of the WEB version of the Bible, but you, as always, can read out of whatever version you prefer. So make sure to grab your cup of coffee, and let's jump right in. Esau said, "Let's take our journey, and let's go, and I will go before you." Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender, and that the flocks and herds with me have their young, and if I overdrive them on one day, all the flocks will die. Please let my Lord pass over before his servant, and I will lead on gently, according to the pace of the livestock that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord to Seir." Esau said, "Let me now leave with you some of the people that are with me." He said, "Why? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob traveled to Succoth, built himself a house, and made shelters for his livestock. Therefore the name of that place is called Succoth. Jacob came in peace to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. He bought the parcel of ground where he had spread out his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. He erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel. So quick recap. Jacob had just met his brother Esau after several years of never seeing him. This was a really scary encounter for Jacob because he didn't know how Esau was going to treat him. You remember from previous episodes that Jacob and Esau were not on good terms with each other. In fact, Esau had originally wanted to kill Jacob. So Jacob was kind of scared to meet his brother. But we finally find out what happens in Genesis 33, and Jacob finally meets Esau, but Esau embraces Jacob and hugs him and kisses him and all sorts of stuff and says, "I am so happy you're home. I missed you, and I'm receiving you with open arms." So this feud that these two brothers had is completely over, and Jacob couldn't be more overjoyed, and he continually calls Esau my lord, which was a fancy way of just saying that his brother was over him, not elevating himself, but rather making himself almost like a servant, just to show that he had no ill will towards Esau and just wanted to have a friendly relationship with him. So now in verse 12, where we are starting today, Esau asks Jacob to come with him. And he's like, "Come on, let's go to Seir. Let's travel the day and make it there very soon." And Jacob's like, "No, I can't do that because I have all these flocks and herds with me, and they have little young babies. And if I drive them too hard, they're going to die, these young babies. So I can't do that. And plus I have my children who are with me, and some of them are very, very young. So I can't travel that fast with you and your men. So please go on ahead of me, and I will meet you there in Seir." And I don't actually know where Seir is. I'm assuming it's very close to Jacob's original homeland, but that was where Esau lived. He lived in Seir and was asking Jacob to come with him. So Esau accepts Jacob's proposal and says, "Okay, meet me there when you can." But he says, I'm going to leave some of my men here with you. But Jacob says, no, don't do that. I only want to have favor in your sight, which is an old-fashioned way of basically saying, I just want you to look favorably at me. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything from you. Let's just have a good, friendly relationship as brothers. So Esau accepts this as well and leaves. Jacob is left alone with his family and with his flocks of herds, and he ends up traveling to Succoth. I don't know how to pronounce it, but he travels there, and he ends up building himself a house and making some shelters for his livestock. He ends up naming that place Succoth, which means shelters or booths. Now, after this, I'm assuming some time has passed, because it says now, actually in the NIV version, I just switched over, it says, after Jacob came from Padan Aram, which was where he had originally lived with his father-in-law Laban and with his 2 wives. That's where they lived, in Padan Aram. It says, Jacob arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. So I don't know how much time has passed between the time that he lived in Succoth and then it came to this area, Shechem. But we do know that Shechem was a Canaanite area, and it was a city as well. And the Canaanites were people who did not follow the whole circumcision thing. They did not follow God, like the God. They had many gods, and many of their gods were very, very terrible. Gods of sex and child sacrifices and all sorts of crazy things. So the Canaanites worshipped many other gods, and they were not healthy people for Jacob to be around. Now, on top of this, if we go back actually a few chapters to, I believe it's Genesis chapter 31, verse 3, and also verse 13 of Genesis 31, it says, I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. So God is kind of telling Jacob, it seems like, to go back to Bethel or to his native land. He never told Jacob to camp near this Canaanite city. And also, for some reason, I don't know why, there's kind of a gap in the story, but Jacob never meets Esau in Seir. He ends up going to this Canaanite place that he wasn't really supposed to be at, because firstly, he had told Esau he'd meet him in Seir, and also God had told him to return to his own land, not to a Canaanite land. So Jacob is not doing the right thing here, because he is camping among the Canaanites, which is something he shouldn't have done. But he ends up buying some of this land in the city of Shechem for 100 pieces of silver, or 100 kesitas. The kesita was a unit of money that was ancient. We don't know the weight or value of it. So the NIV version actually translates that as a piece of silver. So 100 pieces of silver. He buys some land and he ends up living there and encamping there, overlooking the city. He buys that land from this man named Hamor, which we will hear more about in the coming chapters of the Bible. So we will find out more about Hamor and the city of Shechem. But we find out that Jacob is living there and he had bought some land. He didn't meet his brother in Seir, and he also was not listening to God telling him to go home to his native land. But he does actually set up an altar, and he ends up calling it El Elohe Israel, I think. I don't know exactly if I pronounced that right. It sounded kind of Hawaiian to me. Elohe. But that might be right. El Elohe Israel. But that means God is the God of Israel, or mighty is the God of Israel. And you remember that Jacob's name had been changed to Israel when he had wrestled with God himself, and God changed his name. And Israel means he who wrestles with God. So he's saying, my God is the mightiest God. And he puts up this altar overlooking this Canaanite city. Now we will find out some more awful things that happen in this city and some of the stuff that goes on in the next coming chapter. So join me on Friday at 6 a.m. to discuss the rest of it. Now, friends, I thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to go to my website, www.p40ministries.com/shop. I will have some brand new Easter designs coming out very, very soon. It's already the season of Lent. Can you believe that? That's pretty crazy. Lent was actually today. And I don't know if you guys do anything for Lent. If you do, let me know. Message me on Facebook and I can get back to you that way. Even though I'm not on Facebook as much recently, I did link my Facebook account, so I do get messages from Facebook and I can see them on my website. So you can, in fact, message me on Facebook and I will now see it much easier than I was before. But friends, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I want to ask that you have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy listening, and God bless.